Yes guys, welcome back to Hair System DIY. If you're a hair system wearer, we've got you covered. If you are thinking about getting a hair system, we've got you covered. If you're just interested in hair loss and the wider ramifications, we've got you covered. Now today, before we delve into this fascinating topic of SMP and hair systems, if you're new around here and you haven't subscribed yet, please do join this ever-growing tribe. And if you're enjoying my content, please do give this video a thumbs up. I'm going to try and get 40 likes for this video. So first off, what is SMP? What is scalp micropigmentation? So basically, it's a cosmetic procedure that addresses hair loss. It's basically a tattoo where you're experiencing hair loss, usually on the top of your head if you're experiencing male pattern baldness, or on the sides of your head as well if you're experiencing alopecia. Now, it's sometimes a day procedure, sometimes it can happen over a number of days, but basically it requires someone experienced in doing hair tattoos, and it will effectively cover up the baldness with a tattoo, so it will effectively give you the appearance of a buzz cut. So this does require you to always have the sides and the back always shaved to a 0 to maintain an appearance of realism. So we're going to have a look at a few of these SMP before and afters just to give you an idea of what it looks like, and then I'm going to be comparing it with hair systems. So this is a before and after of this guy. So on the left you can see he's got sort of a pretty high widow's peak there. He's still got quite a bit of hair in the middle. But the first thing that sort of sticks out to me is this is a very perfect hairline. Now, it's very rare to get someone with natural hair with such a perfect hairline. I've seen it a little bit in sort of African Americans, but it's actually quite unusual. If you look closely, if you scrutinize someone's hair pretty close, it's not usually this perfect. So let's just have a little look, and you can see even around the temples, just down there, it's all very perfect. It kind of looks a little bit unrealistic, if you're asking me personally. So this is showing you how they sort of do it. So this gentleman here is getting his actual natural hair on the sides, sort of shaved to a 0 first, sort of prep it. And then the tattoo artist goes to work. He sort of draws a line where the hairline needs to be. This looks like it might be a more realistic hairline. And then he just dabs it with the tattoo. And as you can see there, sort of light shining off it a little bit, but that's the end result basically. So it's like a classic buzz cut. I think it tends to look better with guys who do have facial hair. It just, I don't know why, but I've always felt that with men, having some form of hair either on your head or on your face is quite a masculine trait to have. And I think with SMP, gentlemen who have sort of beards seem to rock it a little bit better. I also find that people who've got sort of a more dynamic face shape seem to suit it better, alongside having ears which are pinned fairly close to their head. It kind of, I suppose, maintains that sort of dynamic appearance. That bald guys suit it well, and I think that's why it works with SMP. So people who are basically shave their heads if they're bald, and then they get SMP, and they look good with a bald head. They will look good with SMP. Guys with sort of maybe bigger ears that sort of stick out, or guys with glasses as well. So I mean, I wear glasses quite a bit, but I've seen some guys who wear glasses and get SMP, and it doesn't look quite as good as a gentleman who is not wearing glasses, has a sort of dynamic face shape with ears that are pinned quite close to the head. This is a gentleman who's having his first session, so as you can see, he's suffering male pattern baldness, and then the guy goes at his scalp with his with the ink. So this is only one session. Quite often it will be sort of 2 sessions, maybe even 3 to get it fully done. But as you can see as well, he's got a really nice beard, and I definitely think having a beard with ears which are pinned sort of quite close to the head, SMP can work all right. As you can see, there's not much up there, but it is session 1. I'll be fair to them, it is session 1. So that's kind of what to expect. Another thing with SMP, which I'm not a fan of, is the fact that when you're under a light, it sort of shines on your head, and it can make you look as if you're suffering from male pattern baldness. I don't know, it just looks a bit squeaky. I came across this one, and this is just awful. Bearing in mind, before I show you this video, SMP usually lasts 5 years before you need a touch-up. So think of it as an ordinary tattoo, but an ordinary tattoo which is constantly exposed to the elements and constantly exposed to sunlight because it's on your head. Now, I have 2 tattoos on my back. I've had them for about 15 years, but I haven't needed to touch them up because it's covered by clothes. So they don't need touching up, but for males who get SMP, you do need to go back every 4 to 5 years, and then that's another, $3,000 to $5,000 that you're paying to maintain this sort of buzz cut appearance on your head. As you can see here, this person, and this is a problem as well, because the SMP industry isn't regulated, it means that basically anyone who thinks they can do SMP is allowed to do SMP. You don't have to have any qualifications. You can just do it. And as you can see here, this has gone horrifically wrong for this poor guy. This is absolutely awful. Whoever he's seen does not know what on earth they're doing. And the problem is the only way to fix that is by basically getting tattoo laser removal, which is really painful from what I've heard. And it costs a lot of money. And then you're left in the same situation that you were before SMP. You're left with a bald head, basically. So he would have spent probably several $1,000s on this, possibly several $1,000s to have it removed, and then he's back at square one again. So effectively spending a lot of money for zero result, and then he'd maybe look at getting a hair transplant or a hair system or something like that. But stuff like this is horrifying, really. It really is. And the fact that you don't have to be specifically skilled, there's not a requirement to be skilled enough to do this. Terrifying. I'd also like to point you guys to this video called Top 3 Reasons SMP is a Terrible Decision. I'm not saying I 100% agree with him, but it's quite useful to always look at the pros and cons of every single procedure. And this is exactly what I did with hair systems. I looked at the pros, I looked at the cons. So with SMP, you get a buzz cut. And you've got to deal with it. You've got to deal with just having a buzz cut. You can't have any other hairstyle with SMP. I mean, if you wanted to and you didn't like it, and quite a lot of people have done this who've spoken to me personally. They've had SMP and they didn't like it and they ended up getting a hair system because they wanted to have hairstyles. They wanted to have a quiff when it was in vogue. They wanted to have long hair when it was in vogue. Maybe they felt like the expense of the SMP as a sort of ongoing thing every 5 years was too much. And I know that obviously with hair systems there is an investment, but it's a much easier investment which doesn't require whacking out $3,000 to $5,000 every 5 years up front. You can literally pay and get a hair system every 4 months, and it's a lot easier to budget for that than it is having an upfront cost for SMP every so often. Also, I mean, let's be real, guys. Hair systems, in terms of hairstyles, they absolutely knock it out of the park. You get what you're given with SMP, and if it goes wrong, and if you get a horror show, which I showed you earlier, but also if you get something which you didn't ask for instance, if they make your hairline too perfect, like too circular, like the first gentleman of the videos that I showed you, then you're kind of like, whoa, okay, I'm stuck with this, and it doesn't even look realistic. Now, I know hair systems aren't perfect, but they look a lot more realistic than that. And to be perfectly honest, I'd feel really hacked off if I'd spent $5,000 to get effectively that result. Another thing to consider is, what if your hair color changes whilst you've got SMP? So let's say you're a 36-year-old gentleman and within 3 years you go grey, or you start going grey. It's going to look really silly because the side of your hair will be going grey and the top of your hair will still be the colour you had, or the pigment you had when you first got the SMP. So what do you do in that situation? I suppose one option is go back to the SMP artist and be like, bearing in mind this is 3 years later, and handing out another $5,000, just being like, okay, well, can you start doing this a bit grey? And then another 2 years or 3 years later, you're going to have to go in again and have it done even more grey. It seems like a lot of work. It seems like a lot of work. And lastly, and I think this is where hair systems knock it out of the park compared to SMP, is when you get older, you don't see that many people with buzz cuts. I'm talking about gentlemen in their 60s and 70s and 80s. It's rare to see them with a buzz cut. They usually are either just sort of bald with hair around the sides, or they're significantly thinning on top. Now, with hair systems, you can get that effect, you can get that appearance, because you can lower the density, you can cut the base further and further back on the top of your scalp as well. So you have much more options to keep your look realistic. And also, what if you get to an age where you're just like, I don't like SMP anymore. I'm in my 60s. It doesn't look good on me. You're stuck with this tattoo on your head. And I suppose the only option for you to get rid of that is by basically getting laser or tattoo laser removal surgery. And that is apparently even more painful than getting a tattoo. I've never done it myself, but I've heard from various people that it really hurts. So for me, guys, SMP does not match up to hair systems. With hair systems, you get way more choice. You can be so much more flexible as to the style you go for. You can change your style. It's also a much smaller investment over a longer period of time. So it makes a lot of sense. There's no massive costs. You can just pay it over time. Every 4 to 6 months, when you're getting a new system, you buy that. You maybe pay for a stylist as well. With SMP, you've got these big upfront costs, thousands of dollars, and it's a style that you might actually get bored of, or you might not even like after a period of time. And there's no turning back on it. The only way out of it is by basically getting laser tattoo removal, which, yeah, it doesn't sound great. But what's your guys' views on this? Is SMP something you've considered? Is SMP something you've had and you've transitioned to hair systems? I'd really like to know. From the majority of people that I speak to, they much prefer hair systems. They find that the options with hair systems are numerous and almost limitless in some regards, whereas with SMP, the options are extremely limited. Let me know your guys' thoughts. I'd be really interested to know, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye for now.